If you enjoyed a coffee this morning, thank a manufacturer. If you got to work okay, thank a construction worker. On today's edition of the EOBJ podcast, we're talking all things manufacturing and construction, straight from the pages of this year's Stuff Made and Built in Eastern Ontario magazine.
Welcome to Stuff Magazine, a publication dedicated to the fast-growing industries that are looking for talented people like you. Inside, you will find quizzes to see if you're a good fit for the industries, the highest-paying jobs, and the most in-demand careers. You'll also find grads' testimonials, an inside look at who's hiring right now, and information on available training options. Visit stuffmadeandbuilt.ca and find your future.
Welcome to a very special edition of the Eastern Ontario Business Journal podcast focused on this year's edition of Stuff Made and Built, available now across Eastern Ontario. I'm your host, Phil Gaudreau. If you like this show, make sure to like and subscribe. With help from a couple of friends joining us in a moment, we're going to be doing a deeper dive on this year's stories. Stick around for a great discussion with our friends and partners, brought to you by the Canadian Construction Association.
Finding apprentices hasn't been easy, but with the Canadian Apprenticeship Service, there's up to $20,000 in apprentice hiring grants available to help. Find apprentices for construction and manufacturing Red Seal trades. Apply for your grant at apprenticesearch.com/CAS.
Before our panel joins us, let's welcome on Jen Campbell, the editor for Stuff. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Phil.
Lots to talk about in this year's edition. One that was of interest to me is how the automotive industry, which has historically been really focused on Southern Ontario, is spreading into Eastern Ontario thanks to the rise in EV technologies. What caught your eye this year?
So the province is putting on a push to become a leader in electric vehicles. And the Kingston area is at the forefront of this after the Prime Minister announced a deal with a Belgian company to build a $1.5 billion EV battery facility there. Stuff tells readers, as we've mentioned already, especially young readers, what industries are looking for workers. And this opportunity or this investment will open up a lot of opportunities. So to me, that's the interesting thing about that story.
Mm-hmm. This year's magazine also featured, as it does every year, 20 of the coolest things made in our own backyard. What was the highlight for you from this year's list?
I think the highlight, this might seem like a bit of a dodge, but I think the sheer breadth of objects that we're building is what's interesting. So we have this part of the province that seems sort of, we categorize it as a region, and yet there are things, everything from electric boats to caskets for funerals, to brewing equipment, to the beer that gets made in that brewing equipment. And then there's crispy wontons. So it's a very vast list.
That last option sounds maybe a bit more appetizing than the others, but yeah, I agree. The diversity is quite interesting. For folks who haven't seen Stuff yet, where should they head?
Stuffmadeandbuilt.ca is probably the best place. And as I understand it, they can also pick it up in schools and educational institutions.
Jen Campbell, editor for Stuff. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Phil.
Now we're going to welcome on our panelists for today's discussion. First up, we have Scott Ivany, who is VP of Manufacturing for Ross Video. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Phil.
And second, we got Jamie Bramberger, manager of the labor market group of Renfrew and Lanark. Welcome, Jamie.
And good to see you again, Phil.
Scott, let's start with you. How have you seen the discussion shift around manufacturing jobs from the earlier days of your career to today?
There's a lot more conversations around talent development and especially retention. The systems and technologies we're using within manufacturing have advanced significantly, and this requires a workforce that wants to continually be challenged and learn. Recruitment has become harder, and now more roles in manufacturing require a solid technical education before any of the job skills development can begin. Many of the positions we're looking for or will be filling directly compete with the same skills needed in product development and IT. But also, as the employer changes requirements, so have the expectations of new employees. Over the last handful of years, we've seen great people come on board looking for faster advancement and faster access to internal opportunities. And if they don't get it, they move on. We need to find great candidates, and then we need to give them reasons to stay. This has become a focal point of our discussions.
Very interesting. Yeah. So they're looking for a challenge, and there's that multidisciplinary kind of nature to their work and their skill set. Jamie, I'm curious what you're hearing from employers in manufacturing. Are those expectations of job seekers aligning with those of employers?
Yeah, this is not a new conversation, but I think it's been heightened in the last few years, certainly as we move through the pandemic. The shortages in the manufacturing sector for labor have been ongoing for a while. And it's got to a point where, a lot of strategy has gone into this, where manufacturers are competing against one another. I can go down a street and I'll see one manufacturing facility who'll say starting wage $21 an hour. You go a couple of blocks further, and the next manufacturer is upping it by 50 cents or a dollar in this competitive landscape, just to try to fill the production floor. In particular, where it seems to be the greatest gap is around the folks that work on the assembly lines in manufacturing. So I think this is really being driven at the end of the day by demographics. Is a major issue in the area that we serve in Lanark and Renfrew counties. You now have 25% of the population is 65 years of age or older. Almost 50% is over 50 years of age. And younger people, are still trying to figure out what they want to do. And manufacturing might not be at the top of their list as a career choice, because they have so many options now. And if you layer onto it over the last 20 to 30 years, more young people do go to post-secondary. In manufacturing for many, many years, drew from students that did, or from high school graduates who did not go on to post-secondary. And now there is this need for a higher skilled workforce. So it's very complicated, Phil. There's a lot of pressure points that are really hitting this sector right now, and it has been for a while, but it's not getting any easier.
I'm curious from both your vantage points, and Scott, we'll start with you. Where do you see things heading in 2024 for those jobs, particularly in manufacturing? Scott, being kind of more in your wheelhouse. Is the outlook getting a bit brighter, or do you see those challenges that we've talked about so far worsening?
I think overall the job opportunities for the candidates will be steady, and there'll be a healthy employment market for those job seekers. But those challenges will still exist for the hiring companies. And there are advantages to keep and expand manufacturing in the area. The resources will be harder to find. And as Jamie had mentioned, as the older workforce retires and manufacturers look to implement advanced technology, there will be skill gaps that need to be filled, and those gaps are likely to grow.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, I want to come back to you for a second. We've talked a lot about manufacturing so far. Focus of this year's magazine is manufacturing and construction. What about construction in your area? Are those jobs getting picked up? Is the outlook looking a bit brighter for 2024?
It's really interesting to see what happens with building construction, because we see the rise in inflation and mortgage rates, and logically you would think that would lead to a cooling off of the housing market, which in fact has happened to some extent. However, you've also got government pressure on right now around the affordable housing crisis about creating more homes that where they can get rental rates under control. So a bit of a push and a pull there around interest rates and government prioritization around affordable housing. So the housing market, certainly in the area that we serve, I would say is not as robust as it was a few years ago, but it's pretty strong still. And there's still pretty significant demand for carpenters, for example, to meet that need, and electricians and some of those more traditional trades around building construction. So I think over the next few years, it is really, really going to be interesting to watch what happens in the construction trade sector. But I would say that it's still a marketplace that needs workers. And lots of demand as well. I work at the college and also work in local labor market planning for Lanark and Renfrew, and I see very, very strong strong uptake for apprenticeship training and for programs like carpentry and renovations techniques. So I think the message has got to young people more than it did decades earlier, that there are good jobs available, good paying jobs within the trades. In some cases, it's higher paying. For example, plumbers, electricians can certainly do very, very well And it comes down to supply and demand, not enough. And when you're in that situation, then the fees are higher to be able to hire those tradespeople.
We've talked a bit about the aging workforce and the changing educational needs and the changing demographics of who's going after these jobs. And the traditional employment base is not going to cut it, as we've already talked about. So, Jamie, I'm curious if the Labor Market Group has a few statistics or a bit of research that paints the pictures of who's entering these programs and who's entering into these jobs in Eastern Ontario.
Yeah, statistics, I threw some by you already around the demographic shift, which is the big one. And, you can look at the 2021 national census data and you can break it down by region and see what's happening within those areas. You can also look at education levels. I think the big shift that we've seen in the manufacturing sector, at least, is the length that some employers are going to try to attract the workforce that they need to fill the positions that they have trouble filling. So, for example, I know of a few companies who have, after many, many years of struggling with trying to fill their labor market needs or having a high level of churn, that is, employees that come in and they leave quickly, either because they don't like the work or they can advance to another employer who may offer, higher pay, better benefits, what have you, because there is lots of opportunity now. They grew tired of that constant churn. And they have actually now invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources into attracting offshore workers. We're seeing this now where the Philippines is a good example. I know of one local company in our area that has hired 10 to 15 workers from the Philippines to fill positions that historically they have had great difficulty in filling on the manufacturing floor. I think that's going to be something we're going to probably see more of because of this compression on the available workforce for some of the jobs that are there. On the positions like stationary engineers, industrial electricians, those positions are also struggling to fill. And that's more problematic, but because, to be able to find those workers within your local backyard, particularly if you're in a smaller rural region that doesn't have the population to draw from, that's become very problematic. But an interesting conversation that's happening more is, can two organizations share the same employee? One manufacturing facility and another manufacturing facility. And that's the type of innovation that I think is being driven by this labor market shortage. The other thing that I think is interesting is you see some manufacturers right now that are offering parent-friendly scheduling, because another layer of some of the social issues that some employees are facing around lack of daycare spaces. And you're seeing employers trying, where they can, offer flexible shifts that go around school schedules, high school or school, elementary, secondary school pickups, for busing. So I think that's a major advancement, I think, in the manufacturing sector in particular, where they are really trying to figure this out. Not easy, requires a very, very open mind, but it's important to them both from a recruitment and a retention perspective on keeping a workforce to get the job done.
Good thoughts. Yeah, lots of interesting and innovative approaches out there. I want to shift gears slightly for a moment, Scott, and come to you. I know Ross works with a large number of student workers. So let's say you are a student listening to this and you're one of the ones that's bought into manufacturing career. You're going down that route at school. You're excited by the job opportunities. What are the sorts of skills and traits you're looking for when you're hiring students in those manufacturing roles?
In our environment, at least in our manufacturing facility, we rely a lot on collaboration. So you don't necessarily get to sit in a corner, work on your job, do your production of your part. We rely on a lot of the people to help build manufacturing into a better manufacturing facility. So there needs to be a lot of skills and ability to be a good teammate. So much of our success relies on hiring the right people, and the students that we bring in, we're looking to turn them into typically full-time employees once they graduate. And students who can articulate their viewpoint and are vocal, they ask questions, they solve problems, and they can actually demonstrate that they're interested in what Ross does. We're very interested in those types of students. We do have roles within supply chain, in sales and production, but our main target are STEM students. And over the last decade, we've seen STEM students gravitate towards software programs. And that's great. We are looking for some software students, but that area is very competitive. But industries like ourselves do rely on a large portion of our workforce to have a passion for electronics and hardware. And those hires are becoming very hard to find.
Interesting. So let's dive a little deeper on that last point. How has Ross overcome some of those worker shortages that the sector is experiencing? Any programs, initiatives, things that have proven helpful in that regard?
Yeah, I believe so. There's been a strong company-wide effort to be an employer of choice and really create community awareness on the culture that Ross Video offers, especially highlighting the growth that we've seen over the last 5 years, and our success actually during COVID has been phenomenal. We need to be competitive on pay, benefits, career opportunities, but there's been a lot of focus on employee engagement. And so the company has become very transparent with its employees concerning corporate goals and direction, and our managers are trained and encouraged to open communication directly to each individual employee. We are doing our best to attract local talent, but as necessary, we will reach out nationally or internationally and assist skilled employees in relocation as well. With regards to initiatives, we have invested in a variety of internal programs we believe are very important, but also that resonate with employees and potential hires themselves. And those programs include environmental sustainability, equality, diversity, and inclusion, internal skills development, education, and where possible, even in manufacturing, hybrid work arrangements as well.
Very cool. Bring your work home with you a little bit. At least the paperwork or something, right? Jamie, I want to come to you for a second. What are the sorts of programs that are out there to help manufacturing and trades employers looking to recruit and upskill in your area these days?
I think the big one that I think about is just the collaboration that is happening between community colleges and district school boards around trying to turn young people on to these types of careers that they might not have considered. They may have been looking at more, traditional careers, particularly for young women, where they haven't had the same level of involvement in skilled trades. So I think back a few weeks ago, the Pembroke campus of Algonquin College held an event called Jill of All Trades. It was for grade 9 to grade 12 girls who, had an opportunity. They spent an entire day on campus and they were putting things together in a carpentry class, and they were working as arborists, learning about, that type of apprenticeship training. They were doing certainly some electrical work as well. Again, putting different parts together, making light bulbs turn on, that kind of stuff. And that's really, really important. So that's one of the collaborations I think that is happening around creating this pathway or this stream from the high school system into post-secondary or apprenticeship training directly into the workplace. I think we all know we have to do more of that to open the eyes of young people to see where those opportunities are. There are a lot of pre-apprenticeship programs. These are free tuition programs that are offered at the Ontario College system in a variety of skilled trades. Many of them match up with what the manufacturing sector needs. They're 6-month programs. Part of pre-apprenticeship, there's a requirement that employers provide a work placement experience for those students. That's a way for manufacturing and the construction trade to partner up with colleges to expose some potential new employees to their field where they could take them on as an apprentice or bring them into the system. And again, from the student perspective, free tuition, these pre-apprenticeship programs. So that's a great opportunity, and they happen every year within Ontario's colleges. So I think that's a space that we can look at. There are, of course, full-time programs that are tuition-based, where students can look at a program like carpentry and renovations, where that's not going down the apprenticeship road yet, but it's giving them a foundation of building construction skills so that they can get their first job within the field and then grow from there. So I think that's where there is a lot of collaboration happening. And if you look even at the high school system with the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, specialist high skills major programming, which has now been around for probably 10 to 15 years or more within district school boards, you're seeing more streaming of students. Now, the counter to that is that students have never had more choice. And trying to figure out what they want to do is a big decision. And that's why I think parental involvement is very much a big part of this as well, to provide that guidance. And often you will see that if a student comes from a traditional trades family, they will follow those footsteps, similar to what you see with military communities, where a mother or father may have served in the Canadian Armed Forces, and then their son or daughter will follow suit as well.
I bet you the Jill of all trades event, as they were literally turning light bulbs on, there was probably some metaphorical light bulbs being turned on as well. So it sounded like an exciting opportunity. And for job seekers listening and wanting to get into trades, manufacturing, construction, where should they start? Jamie, start with you. Where should folks in Renfrew and Lanark turn?
Yeah, for our area, certainly our website is a good place to go. So it's labormarketgroup.ca. And we have what we call a job tools platform. And this is good for both employers as well as for job seekers. It essentially draws information from job posting boards across the region. And you can drill down. You can say, I'm interested in manufacturing, or I'm interested in healthcare, or I'm interested in construction trades, whatever the sector is. And it will actually show you a scope of job postings that are available within our region right now, and link you into where the job postings are. From an employer perspective, we often will get requests through what we call our labor market information help desk, where employers are trying to better understand what are the labor market conditions that are affecting their ability to recruit and retain employees. And they can request for us, can you provide us with some analysis, some data that kind of looks at what's happening in this particular space right now in the labor market, and we respond to those requests. And it really is just good for both employers and job seekers to get a broader perspective and to kind of see what is out there. And there's a lot out there. While the labor market has cooled a little bit from where it was a few years ago, it's still pretty strong. And there still is a fair amount of movement of employees going, from one position to another, because there are job postings that are still being made. Just one last point on this, and that is, we touched a little bit on virtual work, hybrid work, which certainly, really took off during the pandemic because we were all forced into it. Many employers have figured out a way to make that work well with flexible work arrangements, but the next big thing is probably artificial intelligence. And where is that going to take the future of work? We don't have time to really get into that today, but I think that's both a little bit scary and also exciting on what those opportunities are going to be that AI is going to bring into the workforce. And I think it's going to be a major player in trying to respond to the deficiencies right now in labor shortages.
I'll ask ChatGPT to come up with some answers, and we'll post them at the end of the video or something about AI and impact on work. The recruitment challenges, Jamie, you're talking about hopping from employer to employer. Like you got to drive to the end of the street. If this one says $21, and the next one says $21.50, just get to the end of the street. Make sure you've seen all the signs, then make your employment decision. Clearly.
Well, to the point though that was made earlier by Scott, it really is about what's that workspace like. Right. And it's not just about the wage. It's not just about the benefits. It's for many, many young people now, it's about how am I making a difference? What does this job, what can I say about the value proposition and the culture within that organization? I think that's becoming more and more critical in a competitive workplace.
That's a great segue, Scott, to bring us home here. And those folks who And Scott, those folks who want to work with Ross, they should check out page 67 of this year's Stuff magazine, or they should visit
the career section at rossvideo.com. It's a great resource to find out what jobs are available and learn a lot more about Ross Video.
Okay, Scott Ivany, Jamie Bramberger, thanks for joining us. Our thanks to Scott Ivany and Jamie Bramberger for the great discussion today, as well as Jen Campbell for getting us started. Once again, we thank the Canadian Construction Association for sponsoring this podcast and the many sponsors and partners who made this year's Stuff magazine possible. For important business news affecting Eastern Ontario, the businesses, the people, the projects, and the plants, stay tuned to obj.ca. To find this year's edition of Stuff Made and Built in Eastern Ontario, visit stuffmadeandbuilt.ca. I'm Phil Gaudreau. Thanks for joining us.